again. It's a good, remarkable year then, 10th. We are pleased to have with us Dr. Liu and his wonderful class, as well as our wonderful Mr. Griffin to document everything for us. Yeah. Of course, I wouldn't want to miss this opportunity to thank the biology class of this school year. I'd like to thank as well our MAK community members for making this event happen. Your math teachers who so generously gave their time today that we're disrupting. They're meant to take up their math class today. And so thank you, Mr. Andrews, Mrs. Griffin, your advisors who were notified that we will be late for advisory meetings this next block. For Mr. Travis, Mr. Griffin, as mentioned, Miss Pan for this room, Mr. Mai, Mr. Shea, and Mr. Bill for arranging everything first block for this to happen, and Mrs. Heinzman for granting us this opportunity. I have witnessed a momentous event in the previous school year, and I wish the same to happen for each of you guys today. Whatever it is that takes place, I'm sure it's going to be a very healthy exchange of wealth of knowledge. And join me as we open up our eyes a little further, open up our minds further still, with all the wealth of knowledge that this discourse and exchange is bound to give us. Without further ado, let the debate begin.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Beha. I want to again express our gratitude for MAK to host this event. And this is the 10th event, so this has become a sort of a tradition between our two schools. And our student debate on this classic subject of the theory of evolution. I'm sure in your research you've come up with facts, and today you're going to present your arguments. And since our time is limited, so I want to say that for my students, I want to use the debate to integrate reading, writing, listening, speaking, critical thinking, and teamwork into this. So this is part of the training to develop language skills in communicating scientific subjects orally. And so for this debate, each speaker has 2 minutes. The timer will go off at 1 minute 45 seconds. That indicates that you need to wrap up. And when the second bell rings, and I have to take you off the podium. So please be mindful of that. And also, after the first structured debate, there will be a free rebuttal. That means you can go after the opponent. Then that opponent asks that opponent question. In that case, you have 1 minute to state your question, and the challenged opponent, whichever side that would be, have to come up here to answer to that question. Now, before we start, would today's debaters stand, MAK debaters stand? Our team captain is going to give you a little gift to show our appreciation. A peace offering. Please be kind to them. Please be seated. Okay. Because of the great disparity between the numbers, MAK has 11 debaters. We have 16 debaters. So when the last MAK debater finishes, we'll continue on with the proposition. So today, NSYSU is the proposition that's red. MAK is opposition that's blue. Okay. So, have you said all this? Let the show begin. First, proposition constructed.
Good morning, honorable judges, worthy opponents, and members of audiences. My name is Alicia, As me and my fellow evolutionists research entirely, we were able to find overwhelming amount of evidence proving evolution to be true. And also, I'm here to say that we evolutionists are ready to break the standoff with opponents by solid information and further prove the unsubstantial evidence from opposition is false. So, before my teammates start to explain their arguments, I'll briefly introduce the main point for you all. First, we as evolutionists believe that all living organisms have a common ancestor and have evolved over time. Moreover, we also believe that natural selection is the driving force for evolution. That is what we all know, survival of the fittest. So, to back this up, we have several substantial evidences based on biogeography, molecular biology, comparative anatomy, and fossil. So first of all, the global distribution of organisms and the unique feature of island species reflect evolution and geological change. Comparative anatomy shows us lots of strong evidences that could prove evolution, such as homologous, analogous, and vestigial structures. According to the result of genetic analysis, we could know that all living organisms share the same genetic code, genetic material, and molecular building block, etc. As for fossils, we could use radioactive isotope dating to determine the age of the fossil so that we could prove the evolution. So, what do these evidences that I just mentioned mean? It means that Darwin evolution is absolutely a fact. Thank you.
First, opposition constructive.
Good morning, fellow debaters. My name is Claire Ryan, and my team believes that evolution is fiction. First off, I'm going to define what evolution is. According to Google Dictionary, the definition of evolution is the change in the characteristics of a species over several generations and relies on the process of natural selection. There are different types of evolution, and the one we are going to be talking about today is macroevolution. Macroevolution is the evolution of groups rather than individual species. In macroevolution, the evolution of species result in large and complex changes. After defining what our team believes as the theory of evolution, I'm going to introduce what we are going to be covering in our debate today. Our first speaker, Riley, will be talking about how things cannot evolve out of nothing, and we'll also be talking about LUCA, which stands for Last Universal Common Ancestors. For our second argument, Abby is going to cover how Darwin's claim that reptile lungs evolved into bird lungs does not apply, and how there isn't enough fossil evidence to prove that evolution is fact. Then our fourth speaker, Ashley, is going to talk about Romer's gap and transitional fossils. Celine is then going to talk about phylogenetic trees, common ancestors, and LUCA. Last but not least, our last speaker, Caleb, is going to talk about the lack of evidence for many arguments that have not been proven true. Caleb is also going to continue talking about common ancestry and phylogenetic tree. In summary, this is our team's opening statement, and my teammates will further explain our arguments. Thank you.
First, opposition rebuttal.
Good morning, worthy opponents and most esteemed guests. My name is Hannah Park, and I'll be speaking for the negative side that evolution is fiction and not a fact. I would like to bring up a preemptive rebuttal about Darwin's finches. Darwin postulated that the beak of an ancestral species had adapted over time to equip the finches to acquire various food sources and environment. For that reason, my opponents might claim that Darwin's finches are one of the evidence that proves evolution is a fact. This evidence may seem true, but indeed, this discovery is a case of microevolution. As my teammate has previously said, evolution is defined as macroevolution. According to the evolution.berkeley.edu, microevolution happens on a small time scale, and when such small changes build up over the millions of years, they translate into macroevolution. However, Darwin's finches are required in order to expand the mechanism of natural selection to a macro scale. Darwin's finches is a genetic change, but since it occurs only in small time scales and results in small changes, we can see that microevolution is made possible, but macroevolution is not. And therefore, our confirming against evolution is not a fact.
Opposition rebuttal.
morning, everyone. My name is June. We know natural selection is a core of evolution, and there is an evidence to prove natural selection is true. And there are always individual differences in paper mass. Some biomorphics are white, and some biomorphics are black. And there are many species of birds can eat paper mass. And in 1896, a scientist chart he put forward that before industrial evolution, there are white mass and lichen on a tree. So the white paper mass can avoid eaten by birds. And however, after industrial revolution, soot, less mass and lichen died. So tree become black, and the white paper mass are easy to be eaten, while the black paper mass can avoid birds and become more and more. And in 2012, another scientist, Majorus, he proved that the birds can eat paper mass, which are easy to be seen. So from this evidence, we can know there are always individual differences within the species, and the environment will choose a suitable biomorphic, and the survival of the fittest. So the natural selection is a driving force for evolution of species. It is a truth. And later, my team member will give more evidence to prove natural selection, to prove evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Second composition constructed.
Hello, I'm Nathan, and I'm going to talk about fossils. Fossils are really important for understanding the evolution of life because fossils are more direct evidence and it contains more detailed information. At the beginning of 19th century, scientists discovered that the fossils in the rock had a certain order, and the older materials are deeper and closer to the bottom of the rocks, while the recent are located above. So based on this observation, scientists believe that life may change over time, and these scientists includes Charles Darwin's grandfather. From the fossils, you can see the appearance of ancient life. You can infer their living condition and ancient environment, and you can also experiment the change of structure of the layers. And so you can see the life change from ancient to modern time. Fossils, there won't be weathering or decomposition of during its formation of the fossils. And some of the fossils, they are life themselves, like frozen mammals or the insects in the embers. So these fossils will be the best evidence for evolution theory. Thank you.
Second composition constructed.
I'm going to be speaking in behalf of Riley. Genes can be traced back to LUCA. That does not tell us where LUCA originated. There is no modern day LUCA that can be found. Things cannot evolve out of nothing. Professor Werner Gitt, who studies animals and evolution as explained by Royal Truman in his paper on the problem of information for the theory of evolution, says that animals don't just evolve. They may do so provide their substantial information in its DNA. When it's made ready to change with that they internally have, species can adapt things already have to fit into their environment. But they cannot just sprout wings if they do not already have the parts needed to have a wing. For example, animals that can blend into their surroundings are more likely to survive than animals that stand out. This causes the next generation to change a little bit and become better suited to the environment. Another example of survival of the fittest would be how a species of birds get bigger beaks when their food gets farther away from them. The birds with the shorter beaks will die off because they cannot reach the food, which leads to only the birds with long beaks procreating, and that causes the babies to have long beaks. There is evidence that these small changes or modifications do not take place over time, but there is not evidence that one species makes another species. A mother bunny will have bunny babies. A mother bunny will never have a duckling. The bunny cannot have a baby duck because it does not already have the traits to make a duck. It has the traits to make a bunny. This example shows how variations can occur by traits changing over time in bunnies. But new forms of life cannot be changed if species do not have the specific information built within them from the beginning.
Second opportunity rebuttal.
Good morning, my name is Elizabeth. As Dr. Michael Doolan stated, it is impossible for a species to evolve because it doesn't have enough new information to change and there is no source for that information. Small and random changes or mutations might exist and occur, but big changes like reptiles changing into birds are impossible due to the amount of new code needed. Having a full development like evolution is like making a new book into a library. Where does all the rest of the book information come from? So the theory is that it must be added very slowly. However, the argument for partial development like lungs or heart would actually result in incomplete organs, thus cause the creature to die rather than evolve. They couldn't develop that much information to change, so that makes the theory of evolution impossible. Furthermore, biodiversity depends on thriving ecosystem. All living things working together in evolution theory ecologically is minimal in the beginning and grows as species grow, multiply and evolve. In creation, ecology is highly developed from the beginning and degenerates over time. It is possible for two species in close ecological relationships to refine their relationship through mutual selection, but this does not explain how they came to be ecologically related in the first place. There must be some other explanations. More and more evidence from ecology and biodiversity studies suggest something quite different from retroevolutionary accumulation of species and step-by-step development of what would eventually become essential ecological relationships. Moreover, the essential nature of ecological relationship now does not appear to allow time for evolutionary development of ecology. Thank you very much.
You still have 15 seconds.
Ecosystem will have failed many times over without the full range of ecological services.
What's up, everyone? My name is Aaron, and today I'm talking about fossil again. According to Nathan say, fossil is very important because we study fossil in a sediment rock, and we all know the sequence or order about organisms exist, or we study species in different times, and we will get a conclusion is species will change as time goes on. But you ask me, what if something happen like earthquake or some geography phenomena make the sediment rock reverse or something happen? What can we do? We can use carbon 14 dating to get the exact age of fossil. Carbon 14 is a carbon's isotope. It is radioactive. It has 2 more neutrons than regular carbon, and its half period is about 5,000 years old. We can know the exact number and exact sequence of species. And first, you say the fossil we found is compared with the creature we know in nowadays is very different number. What can we do? We can use transitional fossil. Transitional fossil is a fossil which keep its ancestor and upstream characteristic like this. This is an archaeopteryx. And archaeopteryx looks like a dinosaur and looks like a bird. But you will never say a dinosaur looks like a bird, right? So we can get a conclusion is a dinosaur might evolve to a bird. Its transitional fossil is archaeopteryx. So My conclusion is species or organism will change as time goes on. And thank you.
The third composition construction.
Hello everyone, my name is Jenny. There are more than 250 kinds of marsupial in Australia, but it's difficult to see marsupial in our places. Why? About 50 million years ago, Australia was connected to a land of our regions. So at that time, Australian biology was almost indistinguishable from other continents. However, with the movement of the plates, Australia was gradually moved away from our continent, causing them to have no recorded communication with other continents for nearly 50 million years. So they have not been assimilated by other continents, by organisms in other continents, and remain a high degree of independence. Marsupials are also found in other continents, but Eutherian mammals there are more powerful. So they gradually replace marsupial around the world. The reason why marsupial in Australia did not go extinct is because Eutherian mammals could not cross the ocean, and environment, climate did not change too much. So marsupial can remain in Australia and begin to multiply and evolve. Geographical isolation has caused similar species but different, and between continent and different regions. So it was referred that species was a product of natural selection. So I support Darwin's theory of evolution with biogeography. Thank you for listening.
The third opposition construction.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I'm going to be talking about why I believe that evolution is fiction. Evolutionists claim that reptile lungs changed into bird lungs, however this cannot have been possible. Reptiles and birds have completely different reproductive and respiratory systems, and bird lungs function completely different than land animal lungs do. The reptile lungs' airflow is bidirectional and passes in and out of one tube which ends in air sacs. In birds, however, airflow is in one direction continuously through the lungs through interconnected air sacs connected to bones, and it keeps the bird's lungs from deflating. The passages in birds' lungs cannot fill with air and empty again, as with land-dwelling creatures, and half-formed lungs wouldn't work, and a transition form between the lungs wouldn't let the species be able to breathe, and the intermediate form wouldn't be able to survive. A second piece of evidence is that there aren't enough transitional fossils found in the fossil record to prove evolution is a fact. The fossil record shows that other extinct creatures had shared features or physical structures that are found in different kinds of living organisms, but shared features are not the same as transitional features. One example that scientists believe was a significant transitional missing link was the Archaeopteryx fossil, which was believed to be the transition between reptiles and birds, because it had features such as wings and feathers, but also the skeleton of a small dinosaur. However, upon further research, physician Dr. Werner found that the Archaeopteryx was nothing more than an extinct bird. The features used to identify it as a transitional form, such as the skeleton, are present in birds today, and the claws on their wings are found in modern bats, and their teeth are not at all similar to dinosaurs. The Archaeopteryx also had fully developed flight feathers and was able to fly like any other bird. Gaps in the fossil record still exist today, even after evolutionists believe that they've been filled. Darwin himself said, "Why, if species have descended from other species by fine gradations, do we not everywhere see innumerable transitional forms?" And these are some of the reasons why we believe evolution is fiction, not fact.
The third opposition response.
So good morning. I'm Bella, and I'll be rebutting against common ancestry of the evolutionary theory. My opponents wants you to believe that the theory of evolution is unshakable science, but believers of the theory of evolution, our opponents, decide that almost all species can be traced back to a few common ancestors just because they share some observable patterns. In other words, they want you to believe that just because a group of species shares some common traits, they may well come from the same ancestor. This notion of common ancestry commits the logical fallacy of overgeneralization. For example, a triangular bone. Just because we can identify from a bunch of paintings an artist's signature mark, doesn't mean that all paintings with a triangular bone in them come from the same artist. Likewise, just because we can classify animals and plants by a certain probability, doesn't mean that we have to attribute any commonality to a common ancestor. A classification scheme serves only to classify things. Using classification as evidence to establish a biological lineage is a speculation that has gone beyond its original function. Although Darwin has made an arbitrary distinction between traits inherited from common ancestors and those that are merely analogous variations, which refer to similar traits shared by related organisms due to adaptations in response to similar environmental needs. Now the question comes down to what to decide which is which. Who's making the call? Given so many gaps in the fossil records, the differentiation between seriously sharing a common ancestor and just having analogous variation is really just anyone's guess. Yes, we can see that all organisms have ancestors, but speculating that remotely lookalike species have a common ancestor is a storyline that is too far-fetched. Yes, making inferences is science, and no, overgeneralization is not. Yes, coming up with a classification scheme is science. No, stretching a classification scheme to make a genealogy and explain away fictional lineage is not. With all due respect, the evolutionary theory is more fictional than factual because it is loaded with entire speculation and founded on flawed arguments.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I suppose that Darwin's theory of evolution is a fact. Nowadays, we can find 22 species of genus Macaca in Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, and Northwestern Africa. And among them, the Formosa rock macaque is the only species confined to Taiwan, and the Japanese macaque is the only species confined to Japan. According to the fossil record, the macaque originated in North Africa about 6 million years ago and spread to India about 3 million years ago, and expanding from south to north to central China about 600,000 years ago. And according to the identification of tooth fossils of monkey in Taiwan, they were all in the Middle Pleistocene lattice about 300,000 years ago. So it is certain that there were macaques in Taiwan about 300,000 years ago. The reason why the similar but different species we can find on the mainland and its neighboring island is because that they were once geographically connected. Based on above evidence, we know that the species now are being different due to geographical isolation, but they still have common ancestors. So I suppose that Darwin's theory of evolution is a fact. Thank you for listening.
The fourth conversation construction.
Good morning, I'm Jamie, and to begin with, I indicate that our point is that evolution is a fact. According to Darwin's theory of evolution, he proposed that all species come from a common ancestor, and new species come from the existing species. That means there must have some similarities between different species. Comparative anatomy is the study of body structures of different species in order to understand the adaptive changes that have undergone during evolution from a common ancestors. The two major concepts of comparative anatomy is homologous structures and analogous structures. Now, I'd like to use homologous structures evidence to expand on my point about how evolution is a fact. Homologous structures are organs or skeletons of animals and organisms that, because of their similarities, suggest a connection to a common ancestors. These days, scientists found that a bone with similar anatomical features in very different species. You can look on these pictures: a cat leg, horse leg, bat wings, and dolphin slipper, and human's arm. The structures are very similar. That shows their forelimbs are built of the same bones, but they can be traced back to a common structures in an animal. In this case, scientists found that the fin of the Prosotelogous fishes, like this one species is silicans, in which there can be basic arrangement of bones was first established. This is their bones, and indicates that no species that had a common ancestors. So based on the comparative anatomy evidence, I suppose that evolution is a fact. Thank you.
The fourth application construction.
most esteemed guests. My name is Ashley, and our team firmly believes that evolution is fiction, not fact. One major hurdle for evolution is Romer's gap, which is a 30 million time period gap that lacks transitional fossils to show how water creatures evolved to land creatures. Harvard vertebrate paleontologist Alfred Romer noted the fact that there is no transitional fish to tetrapod fossil evidence within this 30 million time period to support evolution. Evolutionists have attempted to make claims to shorten Romer's gap to 15 million years through fossils and carboniferous sediments. One of them was a fish-like creature called the Crassidorinus, which was discovered in the early carboniferous strata where a transitional form was needed. Therefore, evolutionists claim that that is a transitional form. If this creature was clearly a full-time aquatic creature, having features to live well in water but no features to make them capable of living on land, and therefore was not a transitional form at all. Caterpillar is another major fossil that was found to oppose Romer's gap. However, it was found to be a fully terrestrial creature, therefore not aiding the water-to-land evolution of animals. Fact is defined in a dictionary as something proven true, and so based on this, we see that evolution cannot be fact because there's nothing to prove the evolution of water-to-land creatures true, which is an important part of evolution. There has also been a sudden explosion of terrestrial life at the beginning of the Carboniferous system, where numerous terrestrial fossil creatures have been found in Triasian strata, such as a variety of coastal fauna, several different types of lizard-like creatures, and fully-like creatures such as arthropods. It was a sudden explosion of life because there was no transitional forms before Carboniferous to explain why the rock worker in the lower Carboniferous was suddenly full of complex terrestrial life. Since macroevolution is defined in the dictionary as a major evolutionary change over long periods of time, then the transition from water to land creatures must not be evolution because the sudden emergence of terrestrial life at the lower Carboniferous wouldn't have given time for macroevolution as it wasn't possible for such a huge change to occur so suddenly. Therefore, this is why my team firmly believes evolution is fiction and not fact.
The fourth opportunity.
According to Oxford Dictionary, natural selection is the process through which a population of living organisms adapt to change. In other words, the evolutionary theory claims that the traits that help a species adapt. The environment gives the species a better chance of surviving and thus being selected naturally. And according to multiple sites, good traits can be defined as beneficial to survival. And what they're saying is that the trait remains and therefore has been selected. The trait remains, therefore it is beneficial. Beneficial traits can be and because it is beneficial, it is what nature will select. This is the type of logical fallacy known as circular thinking. And believers of the evolutionary theory may try to explain this circularity by saying that natural selection provides a way of explaining the course of biological changes by putting all the variables that people can think of into the equation. But when they say natural, what do they mean by natural? Is my conscious choice natural? Is my man-made decision natural? If there is a will behind a selection, it is not. Is it still natural selection? Well, it is only logical and thus fair to say that as long as there are factors under any sort of conscious control that interact with the environment to steer process, this process is no longer natural.
Hello everyone, I'm Yu, and I will show more evidence based on comparative anatomy to support that evolution is a fact. We all know that monkeys, cats, rats, and other mammals have tails. The primary function of tails is to brush away flies and other insects. And for cats, they also use it to balance. And for monkeys, they use it to grab tree branches. Surprisingly, humans also have similar tail structure, which is called coccyx or tail bone. And it is located at the bottom portion of the spine. Although the human's tail serves no purpose, but the tail structure between monkeys and humans and other mammals still give us an evidence to linking to the common ancestor and to evolution. Because after evolution, human hair is useless, but for monkeys, it is still useful. In addition to bone structure, scientists also found that the heart structure between humans, turtles, and other species, they have basic similar structure. As we can see, humans and turtles' heart structure is very similar. In the process of the evolution, they have been modified to adapt to the environment they live, and this is the evidence. And based on this evidence above, I strongly believe that the evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Good. Composition construction.
Hello everyone, I'm Liang. I'm a supporter of Darwin's theory of evolution. Today I want to use comparative anatomy with analogous structure as my main direction. So what is analogous structure? It refers to an organ that has similar function and appearance, but has different structure from two species which are not closely related. For example, bird use wings for flight movement. Butterfly use wings for air movement. But butterflies are insects, and the wings of the former are formed by their limbs, and the wings of the latter are formed by their skin. Any other example? Shark belong to fish. Have fins to help themselves in one activity. And the whale, which are mammals, also have fins. But they are not real fins, but flipper, which are derived from their limbs. From the above evidence, it can prove the existence of evolution. Therefore, I believe in Darwin's theory of evolution. Thank you for listening.
The third composition construction.
Hi, my name is Celine, and today I'm going to talk about where our team strongly believes that evolution is fiction and not fact. First and foremost, evolutionists believe that every species on Earth is descended from one common ancestor called Luca, which stands for the last universal common ancestor. That was born around 3 to 4 billion years ago. After many years of looking and researching, scientists still haven't found enough traces of Luca or any specific fossil evidence to prove its existence. Ernest Haeckel, a German naturalist, wanted to convince people that species share the same common ancestor. From 1868 to 1908, he published a series of books with many illustrations of embryological stages of the species, and homologous structures can only be seen in embryo development. But as soon as it was published, it was immediately proven wrong and inaccurate by the scientists. For example, the current evidence shows that echidna embryos developed their lymph nodes much later on than the ones that were shown in the illustration, in which the echidna embryos were developed from an early age. Even though Haeckel's embryo illustration were already proven wrong with evidence, it is still copied into textbooks and used as references. This caused many misleading information not one correct. Until 1997, when Haeckel's embryological theory was brought up again by scientists and British biologists and embryologists, claiming that Haeckel had intentionally misrepresented the embryologist's development. And also many of his embryo images were reused multiple times in different areas. Jerry A. Coyne, a professor at the Department of Ecology and Evolution at the University of Chicago, stated, "If evolution meant only gradual genetic change between a species, we only have one species today, a single highly evolved descendant of the first species. Yet we have many. How does this diversity arise from what essential form?" Also, British biologist Michael Rickarson stated that Haeckel's embryological theory was turning out to be one of the most famous fakes in biology. This is why my team and I strongly disprove the theory of evolution and strongly believe that evolution is fiction and not fact. Thank you.
Fifth, opposition constructive.
Hello everyone, my name is Harlan, and today I'll be talking about how transitional forms are misleading and false. According to PBS.org, it tells us that a transitional form is a species that is intermediate between two different species. If people say that transitional forms are not discovered yet, why was it never discovered in the fossil recording along with other fossils in the past millions of years? Since some fossils of many other species, such as whalefish, has been found, then why hasn't the transitional forms between the evolving two been discovered yet? This just clearly says that transitional form can never exist and have never existed. Since macroevolution cannot be measured, we haven't got a hold of transitional species at all. Suddenly, from a small microorganism, it turned into a whale. Organs cannot just appear out of nowhere. Likewise, many fossils shows giraffe with shorter necks, opposed to long necks that we see today. Many evolutionists claim that they have longer necks now because they needed to reach the leaves higher to adapt to the environment. However, if that's the truth, then why haven't humans adapted to the environment by growing larger eyes to see in the dark, having an epiglottis at the back of our mouth to prevent choking on food, a bigger pelvis to prevent labor pain, and more other improvements? If there was transitional forms between apes and us, then those problems would have been solved centuries ago. Furthermore, common characteristics between two species does not explain that we have a common ancestor, but we have a common creator. For example, we are similar to monkey, and many birds are similar to certain dinosaurs, because a common creator created all of us. The chance of a random explosion cannot make structure that have a variety of functions. In contrast, a common creator is the only one that can make these function and make it similar to other species. Plus, the Big Bang couldn't have created everything on Earth. The animals are complex DNA and humans. The only explanation for a complex system to be made is through an intelligent designer, not a natural phenomenon. Thank you.
Fifth, opposition rebuttal.
Hello everyone, I'm James. I'm going to introduce another comparative anatomy instance to firm my standpoint that evolution is a fact. There are some structures of species that do not obviously function, but of their close genetic relationship species. Those structures work normally, and we call them vestigial structures. Vestigial structures are not the mechanism of use or disuse. It is the result of mutation. For example, this is a whale skeleton, and we can see that the initial part of tail hides pelvic and leg bones vestige, and this structure is not essentially useful for whales living in the ocean, because we know that the whales are evolved from tetrapods, and tetrapods use their hind limbs to climb or walk. But now whales don't need to use that, so the hind limbs degenerate and vestige in whales' bodies. And another example is kiwi bird, which is a kind of wingless bird live in New Zealand. And kiwi bird cannot use their wings to fly like other common birds, because in the ancient North and South Islands, there were not quadrupeds or snakes. Birds didn't have to run away, and besides, the food on the ground are abundant. Therefore, their wings and the flying ability degenerated gradually. So, these two examples tell us that the species will degenerate the structure, which don't really need it through evolution. And we can know that vestigial structures are evolved from the reasonable position of common ancestors. So, to sum up, I believe evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Sixth, opposition constructive.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lilian, and I'm here to stand for evolutionary. At the beginning, all creatures are the same, and then gradually there are differences between creatures, and different creatures accumulate more difference and become more and more different from each other. And this process is constantly repeated, forming a variety of different creatures. We use a phylogenetic tree or evolutionary tree to indicate the evolutionary variety of species.
All organisms can be tracked back to the same ancestor, which is equivalent to the idea that species are mutable. However, because all species are derived from a common ancestor, the genetic principle DNA, RNA, protein, and genetic code are the same. We can take RNA or cytosine in each species of ribosomes analyze because the gene sequences have high mutation rates, resulting in difference between species. And for example, scientists have analyzed the genomes of humans and chimpanzees from 189 different regions and found that the DNA sequence of humans in each region are highly identical to those of chimpanzees on the African continent. And it can be assumed that the common ancestor of humans may have originated from the African continent 20,000 years ago. The both are why I suppose Darwin's theory of evolution. Thank you.
The sixth opposition, constructive, and summation.
To start with, a fact is something that is proven true and supported by evidence. And so evolution cannot be a fact because of the lack of evidence for many crucial arguments. For example, the fossil record shows evidence of shared features between organisms. But the problem with the fossil record is that there aren't enough transitional fossils to prove what the intermediary stages look like. There are shared features that are caused by mutations that would support microevolution, such as insects developing an immunity to a certain chemical. But Darwin's evolution depends on macroevolution because it is needed to explain how a dinosaur evolved to a bird. This would then require transitional fossils for each major change, which is what the naturalists have failed to present. Another problem with Darwin's evolution is that there isn't a clear answer for how life formed on Earth. Using abiogenesis to explain how Luca came to Earth contradicts many laws and theories, including biogenesis, which have been proven true by many scientists. If you don't have an answer that doesn't contradict or question other laws or theories, then how can you prove that all organisms have evolved from this one common ancestor if you don't even know how it came to Earth in the first place? The last problem with Darwin's evolution is that there's a lot of questionable ideas about how all organisms are related to this common ancestor. According to microbiologist Carl Woese, he said that naturalists have attempted to find evidence to show how all organisms share similar DNA, but the results didn't match their expected phylogenetic tree. The phylogenetic tree is a visual used to demonstrate how all evolutionary organisms are related. But after finding many dead ends in their search for evidence, naturalists have left their phylogenetic tree unfinished, which shows that there isn't a sign of common ancestry after all. Because there is an insufficient amount of evidence for evolution, we will have to assume that evolution is fiction, since many key points can't be proven. This is why we strongly believe evolution is fiction and not a fact.
Now the opposition rests. The sixth opposition rebuttal.
Hello, my name is Tina. I think the development of nucleotide structure and the molecular biology can be used to prove the common ancestor of Darwin's theory. According to the central dogma of molecular biology, DNA transcribed to RNA, RNA translates to protein. In the process, it may occur DNA mutation and changing the sequences. The genetic recombination caused by mutation and the hybridization of genetic material results in changing allele frequency in biotic populations. And the changed phenotypic trait can inherit to the offspring by meiosis. The phylogenetic tree of Darwin's theory. It points out a species may evolve to other branches after a period of time. So we can find the different Darwin branches have different breaks in Galapagos Island. But when we analyze their NFC protein, The protein sequences are very similar. The protein sequences are very similar. It means their genetic relationships are close. So we can infer these Darwin finches have the common ancestor at first, but their ancestors lived in different landform climate and have different source of food. Different source of food. So the mutation gene generated individual differences and evolved to various finches. Now we know by natural selection. So I think the Darwin theory is fake. It's the truth.
So 7 is proposition construction.
Good morning, I'm Jason. I support the theory of evolution is a fact. Darwin said evolution is descent with modification, which indicates the species are changed over time by mutation or natural selection or genetic drift and so on. Then this change will pass down to the descendants forming a process of species to change their behavior or appearance, etc. And there are many microevolution evidence with molecular analysis can strongly support the theory of evolution. So I will introduce the two examples of microevolution. First, a paper shows elderly penguins have significant change between an ancient population and about 6,000 years ago and the modern penguins living at the same site as their ancestors. They choose the nuclear DNA microcellulite loci, which is good and widely used genetic marker to analyze their relationships among different populations. So the results demonstrate microevolution change with molecular evidence in the elderly penguins. Second, a few studies discovered that orcas are in the progress of speciation. According to the latest study, there are 5 ecotypes included with high genetic variation based on the mitochondrial genome. And the results provide evidence for regional divergence associated with their habitat, dietary preference, and the reproductive isolation. It shows the phenomena of speciation is progress and also provides a raw material for macroevolution. Therefore, with the microevolution example and the molecular evidence, I stand for the theory of evolution is a fact. Thank you.
The 7th proposition rebuttal.
Hello everyone, I'm Jimmy. I support the Darwin theory that genes evolve as different rates, although mutation is a random event. Some proteins are much more tolerant of changes in their amino acid sequence than other proteins. The average rate at which a particular kind of gene or protein evolves gives rise to a concept of molecular clock. The molecular clock can be used for putting a series of evolutionary events into chronological order, and this is done by comparing sequence from different species to determine when they less common ancestor in effect during the family tree. And experiment has been done to determine the evolutionary rate of the mitochondrial gene decoding cytochrome B in birds. And this study notes that the rate of molecular evolution varies significantly among different bird species. Some birds have evolved at the average of 1% per 1 million years, but some were found more than 4 times faster. So it is unwise to calculate the evolution rate using one group of organisms and extrapolate this rate to another group, even when one is comparing relative similar species, and determine the actual time of all other events by examining protein or gene tree and other fossil evidence. Molecular clock can determine the evolutionary relationship between organisms. refer a time when species begin to differentiate from each other in the past, and support the Darwin theory of is correct.
The eighth composition construction.
Hey everyone, I'm Ivan, and I'm here to making a conclusion that we all believe the evolution is a fact. First, let's talk about the molecular evidence that my teammate just elaborated. Although we are living in the different organisms are not the same species, but we all came from the same ancestor and share the same genetic principles such as DNA and RNA. And next, the same function organ like the bird and butterfly, they're both in the bird and butterfly, they both can fly, and they live in a same environment. They have a big possibility to evolve the same function organ. And the fossil recall is a good evidence. Because the evolution takes a lot of time. And to sum up about the teammate I just elaborate, the statement of the evolution is a fact must stand.
The proposition summation.
Alright, good morning everyone, I'm Denver Joe, and I strongly believe that evolution is a fact. So through the whole debate, my teammate has given out a lot of proofs and evidence to support our stand. We followed the development of human civilization to explain different stage of evolution research. We also presented different ways and different views to support our stand. We began with nature selection, which is the start of the theory, and Darwin has gone through lots of experience that affect our world since then. We focus on four main topics, which is fossil, biogeography, comparative anatomy, and molecular biology. This order is based on the history of human. So in the past, since the technology wasn't that developed compared to these days, scientists can only find evidence from fossil, which can only be easily recognized and compared by our eyes. And since the technology has improved a bit, biogeography and comparative anatomy has become the new proof since then, and we pushed our timeline forward to present days. We can seek into the micro world to find the new evidence. So combining the four points we discussed in the debate, we can do research about ancient creatures by fossils, and we can do some research and study about present-day creatures by biogeography, and we can find the connection of appearance by comparative anatomy, and finally we can seek and find the connection of gene by molecular biology. Last but not the least, we're now revealing the mystery mask of evolution, and more evidence are pointing out that evolution is a fact. So I will always believe that evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, Denver? Okay, now we come to this free rebuttal part, and the floor is open to everyone. So the purpose is to challenge your opponent. Okay, if that opponent has not made it clear or has faulty logic without any fact, so this is time to get things straight. Okay, so each challenger has 1 minute to come up to state your challenge, and the people need to reply. Okay, so who wants to fire the first shot? Come up to fire your first shot. Who? Okay, come up here. Say your name.
Okay. My name. Okay, my name is Alan, and I want to challenge AB. I don't know your name or and yes, and Caleb. Yes, because you I don't know how to okay, I'm sorry. So, and you guys just keep say transitional fossils. Abby says an archaeopteryx in some part of archaeopteryx looks like a dinosaur or looks like a bird, but I think that is a proof to say the creature will change. The dinosaur will change to. Oh, my sorry, my question is transitional. In why do you say transitional fossil is not evidence to prove Darwin's evolution theory? Okay, I'm sorry.
You have an answer?
I think that there's not enough transitional fossils, and that the Archaeopteryx fossil, you believe that it turned from like a dinosaur into a bird, right? So, but how can it turn from that into a bird if like their lungs, it can't turn into it? And also, the Archaeopteryx has features of a bird, but also it has the features that are similar to dinosaurs also have been found on birds today. So it's found that it's a bird.
Okay, are you satisfied? Okay. Yes, there's another challenge.
I want to ask Abby. You say there is not enough transitional fossils to prove the evolution, but I think that didn't mean that the evolution is a fiction. So could you tell me how much transitional fossils is enough to prove the evolution? So what is the definition of not enough? Yeah, right. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Abby?
We think that there should be one for each change. And also Darwin said if species have descended from other species by fine gradations, do we not everywhere see innumerable transitional forms? And so I think there should be more. Yeah.
Okay, next question, next challenge. Good.
So your fourth rebuttal person.
Fourth rebuttal.
I don't know who was talking.
Okay, who are the fourth rebuttal? Stand up.
You said that like even after evolution, human tailbones are still useless. So like, isn't evolution supposed to eliminate the tailbone then, if it doesn't serve much of a purpose?
Okay, go to the podium.
The fourth rebuttal person said that even after evolution, tailbones are still useless. But then, isn't evolution supposed to eliminate those useful factors to make more beneficial ones? think the evolution is to modify the organism or some structure to adapt to the environment. So human, we now don't use tails. So it may be transformed to use this. But maybe it will not eliminate. But it still serves no purpose. And okay, so so I think evolution is to modify, but not really eliminate or change very large. So that is.
Okay, does anyone want to make addition to her statement? No? Okay, so who's next? Next challenge, next question. Come on, feeling that itch. You've got to come up. Yes. Howard? You have a question? I'm not pushing you. I just happen to know your name.
The second rebuttal said to use.
Could you come up to the podium so that you're recorded? Okay, second rebuttal.
Hey.
Zoom in. Zoom down.
Go ahead.
Okay. The second rebuttal said to use carbon-14 to date for age, but carbon-14 is only limited to around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. And since you're trying to prove fossils more than millions of years ago, I ran. What the? So
Or isn't it inaccurate?
Isn't it inaccurate?
Okay, I see you're a mouthpiece of someone. Okay. Okay, second rebuttal. Alan?
Well, I'm sorry. The 14 carbons half period is around 5,000 years. It's not the year like you say. So we can still use it to know the exact year in the 5,000 years period. Yes.
Nobody wants to add to that. Any question on your side? Next question. Those are good challenges. Okay. Yes, Abby.
I have a question for Alan. What you said was that the Archaeopteryx fossil was a transitional fossil between dinosaur and birds. But how do you know that? How do you know that that's a fact? And also, because it's also a very important transitional fossil in the fossil record.
Because an Archaeopteryx have the characteristic between bird and dinosaur, and like it had Archaeopteryx has feature just it looks like bird and like dinosaur. So we can say the dinosaur might change to bird, and the process is between the Archaeopteryx. Thank you.
If you would like this answer, come up and tell him that. Okay. So yeah, this is the discourse dialogue. Okay. Next question or comments or on this side, that side. People in the back, you're also welcome. Okay, here, June.
You say the compare
embryo is wrong. No? You said a compare embryo is wrong, and your picture. So I think we think it is not enough to prove the evolution is true, but we didn't mention the compare embryo, and we have given more other evidence to prove evolution is a fact. So you say it is wrong, but it doesn't mean the evolution is wrong, because there are other evidence to prove evolution is true. And
We'll give her time. There's a question.
Okay.
Well,
Can
you'll
I?
come next. Yeah. Okay. You
So-
go ahead. Ask your question.
Caleb, you said that.
You speak for her?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm an audience. Okay. Caleb, you said that there isn't enough fossil evidence to prove common ancestor and evolution, but like not all animal when they die they'll turn into fossil. Like it's very rare that they'll turn into fossil. So like the lack of fossil doesn't mean it's a lack of evidence. Also, Howard, you said that there isn't enough evidence to prove, so that evidence is false. But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Yes. Okay.
Do you want to answer that?
Alright. So what I said about embryos is going against the common ancestor theory, which is a key point for the evolution side. So when I use embryos to disprove the common ancestor theory, it basically also disproves the evolution, because the evolution theory is basically like based on the common ancestor.
Okay. You satisfied, June? No? You want comment? Okay. Move on to the next question. Okay.
I'm Dara. Howard. You said, why haven't humans evolved to see better in the dark with our eyes or not choke? That's because we don't die if we don't see in the dark. We have lights. Evolution is based on natural selection, where you die if you don't have this thing, and those that do survive. That's how we evolve. But we don't die if we can't see in the dark. So we won't evolve to see in the dark.
So what's your question?
I'm asking, why do you think it's like that?
Here. So basically what I said was.
Okay, come up to the podium so that you hear your voice. Yeah.
Oh, so basically what I said was like, cause giraffe before they had shorter necks, and I mean they eat leaves. They can eat like grass on the ground. Why couldn't they do that? I mean, if according to you, you said that if our eyes need to be bigger to like, cause what I said was if we have bigger eyes, we're gonna see in the dark better. And then what's the point of having giraffe to have longer necks if they can have just shorter necks and eat the grass on the ground? Can you speak up louder?
Okay. We're here. We're still here. Okay. Okay. Next question. Anyone over here? No more question? Going once? Going twice? No more? Last chance? Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes today's debate.